What's up, guys? So in making my last keto video, I had realized that I also had people reach out asking me about when I had done a keto bulk. If you watched my podcast with Steve Hall and Mike Isertel was shocked that I was one of the very few people that seems to have done a legitimate keto bulk. Now the funny thing is, I've not just done a keto bulk, one time. I've actually done it 3 or 4 times now in high school, in college, and then after dental school. I'm pretty familiar with it, and so I want to talk about that here. Before I get into this story time, I would love if you guys can thumbs up the video, subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed, and share it with people. I know it's what everybody says, but it really does help the channel, so if you can at least give it a thumbs up, greatly appreciated, and that will be doing your part to help grow the channel and get more videos like this. So I guess the first question is, why did I do that? And honestly, if you saw my Instagram post maybe about a week or so ago, I talked about how some people talked about how a low carb diet was better for lean muscle gain. And if you saw that post a little while ago, and then I had a video on the YouTube channel talking about how if you are saying that high carb is better for maximum muscle growth, which is what a lot of people will say, you cannot also say then that a high fat like ketogenic diet is better for lean gains and a cleaner bulk. Those are kind of contradictory statements, and if you're kind of confused by that, go watch that video because I explain it in detail there. But for a long time, people would say, well, if you're somebody who's predisposed to a lot of fat gain, you want to have lower carbs and high fat. And it sounds like it makes sense, right? Because you're like, well, okay, I gain fat easily, so I don't want those insulin spikes from carbs, and therefore I'm going to do a lower carb and therefore higher fat diet. So that was the first time I tried it back in high school, because I was like, well, I gain fat really easily, so let's do that. And then I tried it again in college. And what I found was, kind of to my surprise, I was like, I feel like I'm gaining more fat from this. People are saying that I should be leaner, but I'm pretty damn soft doing this. I mean, the strength gains are fine, I'm doing okay with it, but that was my experience. Then later, I bulked up again with it, almost unintentionally. I found that, some people say I could just eat as much as I want on keto and not gain weight. If you look up the anabolic diet, there was a whole thread on T Nation about that, and people were saying I could just eat whatever I want. And my feelings is that they probably felt like they were eating as much as they want because they weren't that hungry. I can very, very easily gain weight on a ketogenic diet, and even my last time doing it, it was not a cyclical ketogenic diet, which involves carb ups once a week. So I basically do keto all week, although really it was pretty high protein. So I'd be surprised if I was even in that deep of ketosis at all. And then I'd have a massive carb up. And I mean, no surprise I was gaining quite a bit of fat. But the last time I did it, it wasn't like that at all. It was just ketogenic diet, super low carbs. So even then, I gained weight very easily on less than 3,000 calories. You can easily gain fat on it. So basically, that was why I wanted to do it originally, was to see what would happen if I could have these leaner gains that everybody was talking about. I mean, people in the thread were just talking about these unbelievable gains that they were making. I mean, if you can find it, I might even try to find a link. It's Anabolic Diet or Anabolic Diet 2.0 on T Nation. I mean, I'm literally talking back when I was in high school. So you're talking maybe like 12 plus years ago. And it was just interesting how people were talking about these amazing gains. Thinking back to it, definitely a lot of those people were on gear, so it's not overly surprising. But remembering what those pictures looked like, I was like, yeah, okay, back then I didn't know, but now I know. And then if you watch my most recent video, I talked about how I've had GI issues, and that's the reason why I had done it most recently. But I wanted to go into what did that diet actually look like, okay? Because a lot of people know about keto, but if you actually look at how it's evolved over the years in the community, it really has changed. Back when it was just like the Atkins diet, people stuck with eggs and cheese and, meats and everything like that. And that's more what I did back in high school. But even then, people were recommending, well, you should have some candy after your workouts. And it was I don't even remember the name of it, little almost like Pez candies that you would have after a workout because it was just glucose. And then when I was in college, it was just largely still meats and eggs. But now you see people doing it, and it's like I said, all these keto bars and these keto recipes, to the point that you have a lot of people gaining weight on these diets or having the initial water weight loss and then going up in weight because they're having all of these hyper palatable foods. So for me, because it was done for GI, for my GI issues, I was really just having the very, very boring foods. I mean, it was literally just meat, and then it was meat and a little bit of oil, and then meat, oil, and vegetables. I would add one food. It was an elimination diet. I would add one food at a time and see how I reacted, and that literally went over 6 to 8 months. So it was incredibly boring, was not appetizing. I got to the point that I love food, and I love to eat, and even for me, 2,800 to 3,000 was just like, woof, I just don't want this anymore. Even back then, if you looked at the video I mentioned, even back then, I had done some carnivore. Now, I mentioned recently I've been doing carnivore for about a month now, just as an experiment, not because it's something I want to do long term or something I think you guys should do, just experimenting with it. But back then, I had done it for about 5 days. Now, there's a very big difference. Anybody who's been at this game for a while knows there's a huge difference in your appetite when you're cutting or you're bulking, how much you can eat on a given day. You know, if I'm cutting and you give me one day to eat ad libitum, man, I could easily pack down 4,000 to 5,000 calories of healthy food and 7,000 to 8,000 calories of junk food. But when you're bulking, you just don't think like that. Your mind is just in such a different place. It's kind of amazing. I mean, the foods that seem great when cutting, I could just walk right by in a grocery store and bulking, and I don't care. It's not like your mind is just not wired to be thinking that way when you've had ample food for months and months and months on end. So during that period of time, 2,800 to 3,000 of carnivore was kind of sickening. I mean, right now I get that down easily. I actually enjoy it because I've been dieting for a long time, so it's pretty enjoyable. But at the time, just to get down to steak, I mean, my jaw hurt from the amount that I was chewing. I was disgusted by foods that most of us really like. Most of us think, wow, a nicely grilled steak, that's fantastic. I was just kind of sickened by this food where it's like I was just trying to add some spices or something to make it more palatable. That's always been a fascinating thing for me. No matter how many times I bulk and cut, I consistently find that I'm just disgusted when I'm bulking. And that's actually one of the reasons that I stopped doing the bulking and cutting for the most part. I mean, I still fluctuate in weight, but it's like, man, I'm at a point where I'm not really going to be making a lot of muscle gain at this point in my life, right? Probably none for the most part. Maybe a little strength gain here and there. So if I keep doing the bulk and cut cycle every year, it's like, well, great. 3/4 of the year, I'm either overly stuffed from bulking or I'm starving and food obsessed from cutting. So I do think if you've been at this game for 10, 12 years, if you're not competing, I think it makes a lot of sense to get to a point where you're relatively happy in a maintenance mode and then try to make little incremental progress there. But for the most part, these big bulk and cut cycles of 30 plus pounds, I just really don't find beneficial after your first few years. So going back to the foods that I just found kind of disgusting. I mean, again, right now, I'm dieting. I'm hungry. I love a big omelet. I would still love some steak. Peanut butter would be amazing right now because on carnivore, obviously, I'm not eating peanut butter. That would be amazing. Back in high school, when I was doing a keto bulk, I was having a quarter cup of peanut butter and a couple tablespoons of olive oil, and I would just put the peanut butter in my mouth, chug the olive oil, and just try to get it down. And I think about how disgusting that was. And as much as peanut butter is like amazing while dieting, I could eat half a cup of it right now easily. At that time, it was so disgusting to me. And honestly, I did gain a lot of fat. My skin was really oily. I definitely got worse acne back then. So it was not something that I would recommend. And not only that, but even the people like Dom D'Agostino who talk about how keto has all of these health benefits, a lot of these guys, even the people doing carnivore, they're losing weight. Dom D'Agostino used to be 230, 240. Now he's 215 to 220. Sean Baker, carnivore diet, used to be 280. Now he's 220. So these people are using this either for maintenance or to lose weight. Very few of them are using this or recommending it to bulk up. And even Dom will admit that there can be deleterious effects if you are bulking up there, because we know that weight loss has a dramatic effect on inflammation, and that calorie deficit is really helpful. So in that context, I think, I mean, he says himself, that's where a keto diet really shines. It's great because it helps with hunger. You know, it's great because it kind of helps with like the food boredom in the sense that you are actually more bored of the food a lot of the time because it's kind of more plain. There's not a million things distracting you, making you want this, this, and this. It's kind of a few key foods. But when you're bulking up, that might be a legitimate issue. I mean, I'm certainly not comfortable enough to say, based on the literature, that I'd recommend anybody really doing a carnivore diet for an extended period of time. But to be doing a keto bulk, I just don't know. I mean, really, that's just one of those areas that I don't know. It could be completely fine, but if somebody said, hey, I want to bulk up for the next year, I'm going to be doing keto, 300 grams of fat and all this, and, is that going to be fine? I'm not sure I would be comfortable saying that that would be fine. Maybe, I mean, certainly if I was going to have somebody do that, if a client asked me to set that up for them, I'd be having them eat some lean proteins with a lot of olive oil, avocado, nuts, cheeses. I would not be having them do, butter in their coffee every day and heavy cream and all these things like that. I definitely would not be recommending that. Again, that's my speculation based on the data I've seen, based on my own blood work, based on other people's blood work I've seen. If you wanted to do a true keto bulk, that is how I would recommend setting it up. But I don't know if I would be comfortable saying that somebody should really bulk up for that. I think vegetables for most people are really good to eat. I think fruits for most people are a really good thing to eat. And again, even a lot of these keto guys do incorporate some fruits here and there. So anyway, I just wanted to give my experience with a keto bulk. It was an interesting experiment. As you probably know by this point, I love to experiment with different things. I've had scores and scores of blood work done over the years, so I've really been able to see how this has affected me from a blood work standpoint, from a physiological standpoint, how it's affected my workouts. My workouts were actually fine throughout all this time. I've never been somebody who really felt like keto hurt my workouts at all. I usually felt pretty good on keto, more steady energy. I've always felt good on keto. But as far as fat gain, I thought it was worse when I was gaining in a ketogenic diet. And I would generally reserve keto for maintenance or to lose weight. So anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed a little bit of story time here. Again, appreciate the thumbs up, appreciate sharing and subscribing to the channel, and I will see you next time.